Hello, epic viewers from around the multiverse. Brace yourself for unprecedented epicness, because today I'm going to shed light on reasons why it is never worth it to rent in 2018. So why should you desist and abstain from renting in 2018? Why should you allocate and earmark your money elsewhere? Well, when you rent, your money doesn't go towards obtaining anything. In other words, you're not investing in the equity in your own home. You're funding someone else's mortgage. You're funding someone else's property tax payments. You're funding someone else's utilities. You're subsidizing someone else's posh, luxurious lifestyle. In other words, the landlord is able to build his wealth in perpetuity at your expense, and in exchange for staying in one of his vacant properties, you're paying him a fortune. You're sacrificing your fiat currency. You're relinquishing your finite monetary assets, which are arduous to replenish and which take a tremendous amount of time to procure and acquire. So, in other words, in a nutshell, exorbitant costs associated with renting does not vindicate the trade-off. In other words, the costs of rent do not warrant the value it provides. It provides temporary housing. You should invest some money into something fruitful. If you're paying for a mortgage, you're at least investing in the equity in your own home. You're able to secure a greater equity share in your own property. But if you're paying for rent, then that's not the case. The polar opposite is true. You're funding someone else's mortgage. You're funding someone else's utilities. You're funding someone else's amenities at the cost of your own sustenance. So rent, unfortunately, impinges on your ability to fund your higher aspirations, interferes with your ability to purchase other products you may need, such as fruits and vegetables, a car, and of course basic utilities. So rent is just a sheer and utter waste of money. You just gain temporary housing, and it has no value per se. Why? You can't resell the property you rented for years. So I recommend desisting and abstaining from leasing any property. If you need a spacious environment to relegate your material possessions to, then consider funding a storage unit in the middle of nowhere. That may be your best bet. If you have to succumb to making rent payments because you can't qualify for a mortgage, then you may have to do that in the interim before you can afford a mortgage. But ideally, you want to get a mortgage before you pay for rent, because you can't recover any of your money when you rent a place, and you can't sublease a property that you're renting. That likely will encroach on the rental agreement. But rent doesn't cover anything. It doesn't cover utilities. It just affords you the opportunity to temporarily live in someone else's vacant property for a short duration, and then once the duration of the rental agreement elapses, you're evicted from the property that you presumed would be your home. So I hope that you found this video to be insightful and enthralling. Have a wonderful, marvelous day. Goodbye.